Lane Kiffin, offensive mastermind, polarizing character in all of college football, an aggressive play caller, a coach who doesn't just embrace analytics, he leans into them with full force. But a couple questions come to mind when we talk about Lane Kiffin that doesn't talk about his storied past. We're looking at how he actually gets the offense to move up and down the field. What is his version of the veer and shoot offense, and how is it different? How is he using analytics to drive his decision making? Today, we're diving into one of the most polarizing characters in all of college football and the philosophy that fuels one of college football's most explosive teams, Ole Miss. Now, what we're not going to talk about today are the faults of what happened, I guess, with USC, with Tennessee. I'm not going to get a mustard bottle thrown at me today. What we're going to focus on is, what was the origin of what Lane Kiffin's offense is today, and how does he adapt conceptually with some of the concepts in the veer and shoot offense to give you the best understanding of how this offense became so prolific. I will also call out, over the past 2 seasons or so, Lane Kiffin has not been calling the offense for Ole Miss. He has had influence on some of the decision making, but I'm fully aware that they've had, I believe it was Jeff Lebby as their offensive coordinator, and now they have their most recent guy. They've been changing as the roster changes, and that's something I also want to highlight. A lot of people will lean back and look at what Lane Kiffin does, and I think if you ask the average college football fan, they would say it's a pass-happy offense. It relies on the quarterback, and I would actually push back on that. I think if there's one thing I got to give Lane Kiffin credit for, is he adapts to what his roster provides. What do I mean by that? If he does not have a quarterback that he wants to fully lean into, like a Matt Corral, a Jackson Dart, then he pivots to the running game. And I think that embodies what the veer and shoot offense is. Mike Leach said it best when he was talking about the air raid offense and the differences between what Art Briles and what the veer and shoot offense became. With the air raid, it was very simplistic. It was just, we're going to throw the football, we're going to run some concepts that are very simple, but at a very high level in terms of, efficiency and being able to complete your task on that specific grouping of plays. And it's mostly throwing the football. Whereas the veer and shoot offense is a spread offense, very similar to the air raid. It's a lot of wide receivers spreading out wide, but it's more like the triple option, the RPOs, being able to have multiple options within one specific play, unlike the air raid, which had more simple routes and concepts to be able to get the ball out quickly. Sure, there was a lot of screens, but it wasn't really reliant on the RPO system. And that just kind of goes with the ebb and flow of what college football has become in terms of offensive philosophies. You see RPOs all the time. Now, I've made a couple of videos about this offense, so I won't repeat myself a ton, but I will tell you about the concepts and differences when we talk about a guy like Lane Kiffin, because I've talked about USC and the more quarterback run-heavy version of the veer and shoot offense. It has a ton of RPOs. It's very similar to what Lane likes to run. Then we talk about Tennessee with the wide splits and Josh Heupel. That's another version of the veer and shoot, a ton of RPOs, but it's spread out as far as you can horizontally to try to create as many gaps as possible. There's concepts that are all over the Ole Miss offense that are very similar to what Tennessee runs. But we're going to talk about the differences that Lane does that makes his offense unique. And it's all stemmed from the Art Briles Baylor era in the 2010s, which will get its complete own video just because that is the history, the route that led to these 3 offenses being some of the most prolific in the sport and being an absolute nightmare for defensive coordinators. So before we get this kicked off, welcome to From the Snap to the Whistle. It's a new name. This is the first video with the new name. I loved Rush the Field. You subscribe to Rush the Field if you're a returning viewer. I just had to make a shift, primarily because I've seen other brands in the sport of college football with a similar name, and I want it to be very direct on what this channel is going to be. You are going to come here for scheme-related content, and that's what I want to talk about today, is scheme-related content. You guys have told me time and time again, that's why you're here, and so I want to provide that for you guys, because truly, these are the most fun videos for me to make. And I even felt weird just talking about College Football 25, a video game. It just didn't feel like what I wanted to do. I was just doing it to get a video out. So with that in mind, if that's what you're interested in sports, I try to do it in the most simple way possible, is talk about the schemes. Just take another look at a video. I promise you, I'm going to talk about something that is a point of interest for you. And whether it's a like, comment, subscribe, it would mean the world to me if you gave me an opportunity to talk some football with you. But let's talk about Lane Kiffin. Now let's talk about some very simple concepts within the veer and shoot. I don't have to dive into an entire playbook here. I want you to see conceptually what the core of the offense is, and then we're going to talk about what Lane Kiffin does different to make him stand out. As I've built out right here, we have a nickel defense for all my new football viewers. The US nickel is worth 5 cents, which means that there's 5 defensive backs on the field. As you can see, 8 and 9 are the safeties, 10 and 11 are the corners, with a nickel corner here. It could be a linebacker in this position with 6 and 7, but for this instance, I'm using a nickel corner to be in this position. And you're going to need a lot of defensive backs against this offense because you're going to need speed to make up for the gaps, as you can see right here. With how far the wide receivers are shifted to the sidelines, this is what the Art Briles offense, or conceptually, wants to attack, is spacing and forcing you to make a decision and catch them at the wrong time. What would traditionally be just a simple screen pass and say an air raid offense turns into a triple option, but more modernized with the RPO. So this very simple action, with number 5 being the read key, you are looking to see where this player is going to go, because it has a couple of options here as the quarterback is watching number 5. Number 5 could crash down, basically playing number 5 on the offensive side of the ball to see if it's going to be a run. If that is the case, you are now leaving number 4 to be basically on a one-on-one situation with number 8, because if number 3 blocks number 11, then there's so much space right here for number 4 to attack. And at the end of the day, even if a pass is just 4 yards a pop turns into a first down. Now, if we're in a world where number 5 maybe drifts to this side, we are now looking at 6 on 6 within this box. Now this allows for potentially number 5 to rush for a big gain. This is a very simple look in terms of what an RPO is. Now, how do you stop it on the defensive side of the ball? You need to be able to have your safeties be able to bite down. Traditionally, in most passing concepts, an offense is going to start at the safeties, but with RPOs, they bring it down a level because it's supposed to read who is going to be at that intermediate level and bite down. Am I going to throw the football quick to try to get the quick gain, or is he going to go play the pass and now I can hand it off to my running back? It is a super frustrating offense to deal with when it's the crux and the bread and butter, because you never know when it could just pop out and it causes a ton of issues. On top of that, there is scenarios where, say, number 1, who would be the tight end in this situation, could pop out and they get a pop pass, which would mean he is just drifting to the middle of the field because, say, number 6 and number 7 crash down, and now there's all this space in the middle. Do you see where I'm getting at, where there's just all of this space right here? I apologize, that's probably not the best way to evaluate it. Let me see. You got space right here, and you got space right here. We're gonna bring this tight end back. This is where they're wanting to attack, is these gaps right here. Now, if he drifts over the middle, now you have 2 options. There's so many different plays to look at. We're going to look at another one right here. Another aspect of the veer and shoot offense is option routes. Basically, in the moment, on the fly, option routes are what the wide receiver is going to do based on leverage. What do I mean by leverage? Is the safety going to be shifted a little bit inside? Boom, I have a moment to break out to the outside. Is he shifted to the outside? Ooh, I got a little bit of room to move to the inside. It's basically picking your best advantage in that moment. And that's why when I feel that Ole Miss or any veer and shoot offense is most effective is with more of a senior quarterback, because option routes are a little difficult for quarterbacks. They have to anticipate not just what maybe on the field you see right here is 3. It's technically probably about 6 if there's 3 option routes there, because there's multiple potential for what that timing could look like. Say a wide receiver could be potentially on a button hook, and that's the one that he chooses. In that moment, that quarterback has to be able to make that decision even quicker than what a younger quarterback potentially could not process in time. For example, what I have right here in front of you, 5 is going to block down. It's going to be more of a play action look. A lot of Lane Kiffin offenses have a ton of play action going into these choice routes. I put it very simply, just 2 button curls on the outside, but to showcase what number 4 is doing in this situation, with number 8, the safety on the strong side, is going to be the one that we're watching right here to see if he's going to be more leverage to the inside, okay, I can break this to a straight line deep shot down the field. Or if the safety's more on this side, that allows for a cut over the middle. And depending on what this safety does, maybe he bites down over here, maybe he comes into the box, it just depends. There's going to be room over the middle. There's a bunch of different options as this play continues to progress. This is why I feel pretty confident that with Ole Miss, when they had Jackson Dart, Matt Corral, those options, those quick read routes, when they were more mature in their progression and development, they were able to execute this at a super high level. Now, it's not the most complicated offense in the world. I'm not saying because they're able to run this, it means that they're more prone to progressing compared to other quarterbacks. It's still at its base very simple and supposed to make the quarterback's life a lot easier by reading maybe just one guy on an RPO, or potentially on an option route, it's just one piece of leverage that they have to look to, or they have to throw it down to a check down. Now, obviously in this specific scenario, there's not a check down to be had. This is why I also critique a little bit more on a guy like Jackson Dart, because of the RPOs that we talked about before, which is very centric of what the veer and shoot is. It's very simple. You're watching one guy and making a decision. Now, it's great that you make that decision at a super high level, but comparative to a guy that has to read from left to right, make the progression the whole time, it's a little bit more impressive to play at a higher level to be able to do that versus being able to key on one guy and make a quick decision when there's a limited amount of decisions you have to make. Now, I want to show you some of the power run concepts and the reason why they're so effective. I think of guys like Dylan Sampson having great games. I think of what Quinshon Judkins was able to do before he got to Ohio State, because he had an incredible, I think it was freshman year with Ole Miss during the time when they couldn't rely on a guy like Jackson Dart at a high level. And it's plays like this that I think are the core of the veer and shoot rushing offense. A lot of times they like bringing the tight end to be a little bit farther behind the offensive line and use them almost like a pulling guard and use the leverage to be able to create these strong power side runs. Now, for example, there's little versions that make it a little bit more difficult to guard. In this specific scenario, we could treat this almost like an RPO as well, where this slot wide receiver can go out into the flat. Number 2 goes and blocks number 10. And now we're reading number 5 once again. Say number 5 crashes in. Now there's another 2-on-1 situation for the slot wide receiver to attack. And once again, we are in a situation where there's all this room to get an explosive play and a potential. If you break off number 9 who comes crashing down, we're talking about a major play waiting to happen. But on the off chance that maybe number 5 just comes along with number 4, now you're leaving it to be 6 in the box going against 6, because we're bringing the tight end as a pulling blocker to get upfield and try to get the strong side linebacker, with number 5 getting a free rush. And once again, we're attacking these big gaps within the defense to be able to make a big play. Now, as a defense, I've talked about it time and time again, when we're looking at the veer and shoot offense in general, is the way you beat it is you just have better players on the other side of the ball and be able to be disciplined in how your fits are in terms of rushing defense and some of the zone that you can run. Or if you're playing Tennessee, it's a lot of man coverage. You want to be able to stop the guys on the outside. I think of what Georgia's been able to do against Tennessee time and time again. But at its core, the veer and shoot, the reason why it's spread out so horizontally is for these major gaps to happen. I think of a lot of Dylan Sampson's big time runs or Quinshon Judkins' big time runs is it's almost like he's skipping the intermediate part because it's so condensed within the box that by the time he gets to the second level, he's already at the safeties. He's already at these smaller players and being able to get 10, 15 yards at a time. A lot of times these veer and shoot offenses, when they're running the ball, they try to run, for example, maybe up the middle. They get stuffed. It's like 2-3 yards, but then it pops off for a 40-yard, 35-yard, because once they get past that first level, there's so much space because of the wide receivers and corners having to cover those guys. It causes so many problems. So Tegan, you've shown me these concepts for the veer and shoot. I've seen it for USC. I've seen it for Tennessee. I've even seen a version with Oregon, although that one's a little bit more different. What does Lane Kiffin do that makes his offense special to get its own video? Where USC is a little bit more focused on the quarterback run, maybe there's a little bit more motion, whereas Tennessee is dead set on having those wide split focused. While Ole Miss does use them, it's not as consistent. What does Lane Kiffin do differently that differentiates himself? Or is he just running another version of Baylor's offense? No. The difference truly to me is a credit to Lane Kiffin that I think he adapts his offense better than anybody else to the players on his roster. I made a mention of it at the very beginning, where if he does not believe that the quarterback is going to be refined enough to consistently throw the football and make those right decisions with those choice routes, with the RPOs and all those different options, then he is going to run the football. He has been very effective. I think this past year was the least effective in terms of a rushing attack, though the offense put up the most yards that they have seen in school history. I don't think the best version of Ole Miss is the ones that are quarterback reliant. I think it's the ones, and he has said it himself, are the days that they run the ball are the days that that football team is at its best, because they also can control the clock. When you have these explosive offenses, the time of possession gets less and less, effective. I guess they can't control the clock as time goes on because they continue to get off the field so quickly. Then the other side of it, the aggression. Ole Miss, though Lane Kiffin has given up play calling duties and he has some implementation of his own opinion to the offensive coordinator, there was so much criticism in 2020 and 2021 about the aggression of what Lane Kiffin was doing. There was, SEC Shorts made a video about it. There's statistics around it that it cost them games. I think of the Alabama game when they were down 21-0 at halftime, that he continuously made these aggressive fourth down moves due to analytics, which I think is a huge part of what Lane Kiffin is as a coach, is he's willing to try something new, to try to modernize his offense. And if anything, as much as people were making fun of him for being a super hyper aggressive guy that wants to go and try to get 7 because 7 is more than 3, the offense of the entire sport of football has caught up to him. And now I think as we've gotten to 2025 and as we've made that progression from just 2022, that the sport has caught up to that type of aggression for fourth down. I think of Dan Campbell and the Lions. I think of so many different instances of these coaches now implementing that. At the end of the day, going for that fourth down is more worth it than sitting there and punting the football like we've been used to in traditional 2000s grinded out type of football. And sure, there's always going to be confirmation bias or revisionist history just based on the result of these plays. Maybe if we didn't go for it here, this wouldn't happen. A lot of things can happen in that instance, especially when we look back at Ole Miss football. But I think the thing I think about the most in terms of this program is as they continue to flip the roster, and that goes back to the credit of being able to adapt to what the skill set of the roster is, what is Ole Miss now? Because last year felt like a team that was so primed to make a run to the playoff, let alone potentially more than that. I know for a fact they were the one team that no one wanted to face because of the talent level that we're watching with the NFL Combine right now, guys like Walter Nolan and others. So what is Ole Miss going to be in 2025 and beyond? I think Austin Simmons is going to be a huge problem. Baseball player for Ole Miss, a guy that is just going to be an absolute point guard. You saw it against Georgia. He comes and steps in, and because this offense is so quarterback friendly, making the life easier, making those one reads, like I talked about during the conceptual part of this video, that a guy like that can come in cold after Jackson Dart gets injured and get the offense rolling, because it's intended to get the momentum going for a quarterback to feel the flow of the game. And even against a defense like Georgia, though it's not one of the better Georgia defenses, still super talented, he went and led a defensive or an offensive drive to get a touchdown, which led them into a win in that game, even though Jackson Dart came back. I believe in Austin Simmons. I believe in the talent level. I do worry about how much they rely on the transfer portal, but I kind of want to hand the ball to you. What do you think of Ole Miss? Honestly, I don't know what it would be like to be an Ole Miss fan, and after the result, after what happened against Florida, after beating Georgia and not making the college football playoff, what is y'all's expectations over the next 2-3 years? It felt like you guys were building up to this window of opportunity to be something that Ole Miss has never been, a national perennial contender. So let me know. What are your thoughts? And let me know if you like these types of videos. I love doing these. And I cannot wait to see you guys next time when we talk about an old school type of offense. Why does Iowa not get the job done in terms of an offensive philosophy?